this is Tiia from The Writing Diary, your podcast for becoming a writer, being a writer, and struggling with anything around writing. I have been in a writing hiatus of probably 10-15 years, and I'm now coming back in 2025 to try my best to become a published writer. I unfortunately had to stop doing weekly podcasts like I told you before because life has been wild. And having to worry about putting out a weekly podcast right now has been such a big pressure that I had to make the decision to do the podcast when the time frame was right for me and when I had the time to sit down and actually focus on the things I want to talk about with you. But one thing I have noticed every time I do a podcast episode, I talk about how wild the world is, how much the world basically is on fire, and how strange it is to be creative in a world that is on fire. And every time I look back on my last episode, just thinking about how less the world was on fire and how much the world is on fire now. And somehow I don't even feel like this is slowing down because it is September right now. And it still hasn't changed. I feel like we're still going to a peak, and I'm a little bit afraid what this peak is going to be. But one thing is different, because I have been writing quite a lot since the last podcast. And that is quite interesting, because I have taken my time to log out of the news cycle, and I did something just for myself. And that was going to the cinema and watching The Life of Chuck, which is a movie based on, or loosely based on, Stephen King short stories. And the funny thing is, I talked about this exact event. I talked about it with someone. And I was like, I'm ADHD. So I'm autistic and ADHD. And I don't really have a grasp what neurotypical people do when they go to the cinema. I know how to go to the cinema, right? But do people go to the cinema all by themselves, or do they organize an evening with friends? And I was told usually people do not go alone to the cinema, but I actually enjoyed quite a lot. So I went alone to the cinema for The Life of Chuck. And I don't want to spoiler the movie for you because there might be people that still want to watch it. So I will just describe everything around it. Even if I didn't like the movie, and I liked the movie, but even if I didn't like the movie, I learned a lot about the way the movie was constructed and how the story was told. And I think experiencing something being completely out of the norm, at least for the movies I usually watch, being something very unique and being something very, very much its own thing, was what untied the knot for me and what suddenly sparked creativity in me, and that turned me into someone who now wants to tell a story as well. And after the movie, I came back home and I had a ton of ideas about what I wanted to write about. And I think a day later, I sat down, wrote down a few ideas, and now here we are, 10,300 words later. The story is almost finished, at least the first draft, and I already have started editing a little bit, and I'm very happy how quickly I was able to push out a 10K short story that somehow defeated all of the writer blocks I had in the past few months. But what I've learned from this is that creativity and the spark for creativity can be everywhere. And sometimes you just have to get out of your comfort zone. In my case, it was getting to the cinema and getting out of my comfort zone despite my gut feeling saying, oh, really, maybe I should stay at home. Just getting out of your comfort zone and doing something you maybe usually don't do, and get your brain excited about things. And sometimes when you get your brain excited, it will get excited in other things as well. And in this case, creativity and writing and finding the motivation to write something and create something. One thing I have noticed though, that all of my writer friends that I have feel somewhat similar, even if they don't say it, I can see their struggles with being creative and staying on track with the work they want to create, not only with the work they have to create, but also with the work they want to create. And it's very tough for many to just find this moment where they allow themselves to just let the world be the world and do the things they really want to do. With September approaching now, or already being here, it is also the start of the season where I usually get the most of my writing done, because I don't function in hot weather and the weather has finally cooled down, so I can think again. There's no way for me to think when it's 40 degrees outside, and I do have a fan here, but that fan is also suffering in the heat just as much as I was. So there's no chance for me to do the stuff that I really wanted to do. So with autumn approaching, I'm really looking forward to all of the, well, inspiration, feelings, and emotions that autumn usually wakes in me, so I can get the most of my work done in the next few months. Last year, autumn was basically my 500% most creative month, or most creative season, rather. The most creative month was probably September, October, or the months. But yeah, it is my season in which I am working the best, in which I am most me, really. One thing I have figured out is that I need to work more on German texts and on German stories, because I feel like the German market might be easier to approach for me than the English one, because the English one I'm competing with basically everyone who's writing in English, but the German market I'm competing with German writers. And the group of German writers and the group of German writers, maybe also in my niche, is smaller than worldwide. And I've thought about this before, and I was like, yeah, but it also offers like more opportunities for me. But maybe this is just like, maybe I'm not seeing it in the right perspective. Yes, there are more opportunities for me, but also there is a significant larger audience or a significant larger group that is trying to approach these opportunities, and maybe I'm not seeing the numbers in the right perspective. Since it's now September, and while I have been writing a lot of stories and applying my stories to contests and submissions, I have not heard back, other than, of course, like people denying it. I have not heard back anything, so I think my plan to be published in this year might not be that realistic, because we don't have a lot of months left in this year. But the good thing is I will go into the next year with a lot of experience. I entered 2025 with no experience, and I will enter 2026 with a lot of experience. And I think that is not a step back, but that is a step forward, and it is a step that makes it much more realistic for me to find something. And also, I enter the year with a collection of stories that I can submit, so that is already good. So I'm not really negative or pessimistic about the way this year went, because I have gathered a beautiful community, I have gathered experience, I have gathered a repertoire on stories. I'm actually quite happy about how 2025 went, despite everything, actually. And I know it is way too early for looking back onto the year, even though September is slowly getting in the direction of the year ending, but it is way too early to say the year's over, let's look back, because there are still a few months where things can happen. So, being realistically, it might be that the year is like ending slowly, but it also might be that I maybe have a surprise and something might have worked out. I don't know. I don't want to be the person who's just finishing chapters before they are finished writing. And one thing this year also showed me is that my interests are very much divided in different genres, different topics, different time frames, and that I kind of don't want to lock myself into one specific thing and become an expert for only that one thing, because in my brain this is way too boring. It's way too boring to always write about the same things. And I don't know if I will stay in one genre or if I will keep mixing genres, or if I just say like screw genres and I'll just write what I want to write about and just want to write stories. I'm not sure how realistic that is anyway, but I'm not sure about this. But this year showed me that I am much more talented in different directions than I previously thought that I was. So growing as a person, growing as a writer is something that was very predominantly a focus in 2025 so far. And I'm here to continue it also in the next year. I think this year and the next year will probably just blend into each other when it comes to following goals, because the goals that I have, while I phrased them at the beginning of the year, I phrased them as year goals. I think those are long-term goals, and those are goals that I need to treat as long-term goals, even though my brain is pretty much unhappy with goals that have like no real ending. But one thing I have learned, and that is something that I actively work against brain-wise, is that the best things are not things that you get quickly. The best things are the things that are several steps deep and that you have to work for. And I need to treat every goal in between as a reached goal and as a fulfilled goal for my brain to keep going. And I know this is just this is a compromise I have to make for the way my brain chemistry works. And being aware of it, I think, is an important part already of like being able to reach the goal that I want to reach. So let's phrase some plans for the rest of the year and the beginning of the next year. First of all, my collection of German stories and maybe also German poetry needs to be extended. That is something that I might even be able to achieve by translating stories that I have, because often story translations can be treated as own publications, so I wouldn't block myself out from publicating either of the stories. That is a very important goal that I have, but also improving my social media presence on Instagram. I have been doing great improvements on Instagram. Going further, improving especially YouTube, also where this podcast is published as well. It's published on YouTube and on Spotify. So having my online presence be very clear, very focused, and just very inviting. I think this is something that I can work on and that I'm constantly working on and I'm constantly improving. And sometimes it just needs more experiences and more ideas, and also a little bit of analyzing what worked and what didn't work in order to make it the way I want it to be. Those are good goals for the rest of the year, I think. I want to finish my story that I'm writing on right now. I want to edit the 2 stories that I still have. One of the ones was the one that was declined, where I understood why it was declined. The other one was a short story that I wanted to submit, but I didn't finish it in time. It's in the same universe as the first story. So those 2 I want to have finished this year. And I want to finish my long story as well. I want to finish my gothic horror, cosmic horror long story, which almost is at novel length now. I want to finish that as well. It's a lot of things. And all of them are finishing what I started and not starting new things. But you know how I am. If I see the next shiny thing, I might grab the next shiny thing. And another thing I want to focus on is extending my little writer-reader Dark Academia Vintage community. I have a Discord. I have talked about this here before, and I also have linked it in the past episodes. I have a Discord in which I want to share all of these interests with other people. And growing a community is not so easy. And I never thought it was easy. I have been growing communities for years, so I knew it was difficult, but that's okay. It's okay to have a task that is not as easy as the tasks I had before. But that is another plan. That is not only for this year, I think it's also for the next year and ongoing, because if you have a community, you always want the community to find new members and you want to connect to new people who are interested in stuff. And I think this is probably a good idea also going forward with that. I also have a few personal goals that have nothing to do with writing, that have nothing to do with online and community. Those I will for now keep for myself, because those goals are very sophisticated, if I may say so myself. And they require a lot of still internal work. I'm very realistic about those goals because I have been working on them for years. It needs a lot of work on myself, and those things can work parallel with my writing work because they kind of depend each other. But right now we're first looking to the rest of the year 2025, and I will craft a little plan for myself what to do in the next weeks and months. I hope if you are in a similar position as I am, you find the motivation and the optimism and also the hope to continue what you want to do. Because no matter what happens in the world, your plans have to go on. You have to move on, and you have to use the time that you have in this world to become happy and to do the things you want to do. And I hope I can motivate you a little bit by doing this, and maybe our community can help you a little bit by achieving these things. So that was me saying hi to you and me saying or giving you a little bit of an update of what has happened in the past few weeks and months. I can already say months and I'm a little embarrassed, but I can update you with these things, and I hope to hear from you and let me know what you have been working on. Thank you for listening, and I hear you and I see you and I read you in the next episode.